the idea that we should kill an unborn baby. So I'm not going to agree with you on that. And again, if you want to open that can of worms, fine by me. But I don't see how that's going to help your case, because that's just going to open pro-life, pro-choice arguments.
But it's not just that one thing. It's also denying condoms. It is also putting women who have miscarriages through the stress of having additional funeral services for afterbirth.
Okay, what studies show that people that go into religious hospitals are coming out with stress because they're giving funerals to miscarriages wherever this is happening?
Sorry, what?
So what studies show that people that go to religious hospitals are coming out with more depression and more stress because some random nurse is having some sort of funeral for their fetus? I'm confused.
It's not a random nurse. You see, you don't get to dishonestly label this as a random nurse. This is hospital policy. I have a friend who works at a local hospital who files these reports all the time. Is there a study showing that women are leaving more traumatized? I don't know if there's a study, but considering I've actually spoken to the women and the people who counsel them that they're leaving more traumatized, would you at least acknowledge that at least one woman has left more traumatized because of this?
Well, again, for the same reason I would acknowledge that sometimes pet owners have pets that bite them, and there are risk factors with everything we inject in society. Just because there are marginal cases, that doesn't show religion has overall caused more problems than it has caused good.
What is the sound medical policy or positive benefit of forcing a woman who just suffered a miscarriage to have a funeral and a bill for that funeral for the afterbirth?
I'm not saying that's a good thing, and I'm definitely not saying that's necessarily the dispensational cause, as I cited in my opening points.
Is it okay? Is it a bad thing?
Is what a bad thing to have a thing? I don't think it depends on what the mother would want in that case.
Okay. Clearly, I'm talking about mothers who did not want this, mothers who were not a part of that particular religion, are now forced to go through a funeral procedure for an afterbirth and pay for that as well, because that's the hospital's policy. Is that better or worse than the hospital that doesn't do that?
Okay, yeah, clearly that's bad. I'm not saying that you should force mothers to do that, and I would like to see some actual data that show this is happening on very large scales.
It doesn't matter what the scale is. It doesn't matter what the scale is. The point here is that a hospital that does not inject religious doctrine doesn't do that. And a hospital that does inject religious doctrine does that. And so everything that what we've added here is bad. There's nothing about the medical science treatment of patients that comes from religion.
Yeah, and a lot of these hospitals acknowledge that. Just because they may do some weird stuff after, that does not mean that's actually, they're somehow replacing that with medical stuff. I'm confused about what this has to do with actually showing that religion, intrinsic religion, has actually sort of not caused benefits.
It goes back to his question, Michael. Is one better than the other? You know, that's the original question that he asked you. Is a secular hospital that does not have these practices ultimately a better choice than the one that chooses to, based on religious grounds, force you to have to go through that?
Yeah, he's asking you, is there any value added by adding the religious aspect to the hospital?
It depends.
Is that correct? Matt, is that okay to word it that way? That you're asking if any added benefit? Okay.
It depends on the type of religious aspect they're adding. He's citing this one weird case that I have seen no data happens on large scales. And he's saying, see, religion's bad. Whereas I'm pointing to all these studies which show that intrinsic religion does actually increase beneficial behaviors.
Yeah, I don't think that's what he's saying. And I don't. I mean, I know you're not trying to purposely strawman him, but I think what he's saying is if there's even one case where religiosity has that effect over a hospital which has no religiosity, then it automatically has a net negative effect, because it doesn't matter if there's one instance or a million instances. The hospital that doesn't have the religiosity won't have any of those things. Is that correct,
Matt?
So the issue was, how do we determine whether or not religion is a positive influence on society? Because I'm happy to acknowledge that religions have had positive impact, but I don't find that to be particularly compelling, because the issue isn't I can have a positive impact with a lie, and I can also have massive negative consequences with that as well, and I don't think we would necessarily call that a good thing. If the only question is religion a positive influence on society? I said yes at the outset. My point is that that's a terrible question. It's like saying, has this mass murderer done anything good? Yes. Surely they have. And so what I want to go through and figure out is how do we figure out whether this is a net positive or not? And at the end, even if it's a positive, I mean, my primary concern is whether or not it's true. But I think when you look at, I think the studies that look at intrinsic religiosity to say, it contributes to, reduce crime rates and all these other things. I don't think they're looking at the whole picture. And I don't think that we are in anywhere near a position where we can have good studies yet on the whole picture, because there are religious doctrines, some of which I have no idea what. I've never met Mike. I didn't know what things he ascribes to or not. But to call a policy of the Catholic Church at hospitals fringe, that just tells me Mike's not a Catholic, or hasn't looked into what the Catholics are doing. And my question at the beginning was, we have something, a church, a school, let's help the homeless. And we have one version of it that has no religion in it, and another version of it that is tied to religion. And which one of those two is better? Because when I go out under 6th Street to help atheists helping the homeless or secular humanists at work feed the homeless, the first question we get, or a common question we get, is, what church are you with? Because they have in their head that if you're out here doing good, you're a church. And we always point out, nope, we're atheists, we're secular humanists. We are giving them a sandwich without requiring them to listen to a sermon first. And from the perspective of the religious individual, they think that both of those things are good. Both giving them a sandwich and teaching them about Jesus is a good thing. And yet that hasn't actually been established. So when I look at this, if we remove religion from it, what have we lost? And if we've lost nothing, or worse, if we've gained something, we've gained efficiency, et cetera, whatever, then I don't know how one could say that religion is a positive effect, just because you can say that intrinsic religious people are less likely to commit crimes than people who aren't intrinsically religious. That is, you're not looking at the whole picture there. And so that's why I came up with this particular example. If we go out and feed the homeless, and we just do it because we care about the homeless, is that better, worse, or just the same as people who go out and feed the homeless in order to teach them about Jesus or whatever?
Well, first, you're taking it well beyond the range of the debate or the discussion based on what we're having. I mean, you're kind of starting to blend it into what's true about reality and what's not true about reality. I mean, is teaching people about Jesus would be a good thing depending on whether it's true or not. And I think we basically put aside that just to talk about, is religion beneficial for society or whatnot. As you asked earlier, what have we lost if we move the religious factor? Well, again, we've removed a lot of the motivational factors for people to do the good behavior, as the studies show that intrinsic religiosity is what the motivational factor is. You keep saying this example, like, if we go out and feed the homeless, we got to feed the homeless and also tell them about Jesus. If we remove the religion, what have we gained? Well, again, we're not talking about the effects. We're talking about the motivations here, which cause people to want to go out and do a lot of this ethical behavior, which causes the increased ethical behavior. Again, it goes back to intrinsic religiosity. We're kind of missing the whole mark here when we talk about what the studies are actually showing with the benefits of religion.
Okay, so and I'm not in agreement. We can set aside all the things about religiosity, whether or not it's true. And if we just look at in a world with religion, you can motivate people to do good things. And my problem with the studies that claim that intrinsically religious people, which I've already addressed a couple of them, I'm not necessarily convinced that you can adequately tie down a causal relationship any more than you can just tie down a correlation. Because we also know that people choose what church they go to, in part based on what they already believe. And so if you've been raised by your parents to be the sort of community volunteer activist who's willing to go out and do good, whether that idea is consistent with a particular denomination, whether or not it could be viewed as an origin there. I was raised in a household that's primarily Southern Baptist and was taught certain things. I certainly believed them. Many of them I still believe, because I don't need a religious foundation for those beliefs. I don't need a religious foundation to care about other human beings. But we live in a world where non-religious people have been so maligned from the pulpit and across the board that the view is you can't get those good ideas into people's head without something like religion. I'm not convinced that that's the case because I have watched people make, these changes. We are just now in the fledgling era of non-religious organizations building communities that actually work this way. But Unitarian Universalists don't have, in many cases, a specific doctrine. And yet they would probably be described as intrinsically religious, that they have some set of beliefs that they believe. They have some set of beliefs they believe. There's a tautology.
There's no study which shows that focuses on Unitarians as far as I've seen, but go ahead.
But, well, I don't know if they would be considered in there or not. This is why I was also saying, if it's the case, and this is probably the strongest point, and so you may have studies relevant to this. If it's the case that intrinsic religiosity provides the same benefit, whether you're an intrinsically religious Muslim, an intrinsically religious Christian, an intrinsically religious Jain, then clearly it has nothing to do with the doctrines. It is something about this adherence to the social community, we are passing along our ideas. Our parents are here, our community's here, we've got this set of ideas. Because all of those religions, to some extent or another, will teach basic things. Hey, don't steal, don't kill, to some extent. Jains evidently go much further. If that's the case, then it isn't so much that religion or intrinsic religiosity is having a positive influence. It's that generally good ideas, which can exist and can be conveyed with or without religion, are having a positive effect on society.
Well, again, it's not the community. It's not just teaching the community values. They challenge this based on intrinsic versus extrinsic. When you take out the beliefs, the belief in God, the belief in the doctrines, and just focus on people that are religious for the community aspect, it is negatively correlated in every study I've found. Again, this is what the studies show.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Then why did you bring up the community aspects regarding the
because you can be a part of a community and still honestly have intrinsic beliefs about certain things, that it's better to volunteer, that it's better to help people.
And those beliefs come from those effects come from the actual beliefs, not just the idea of
I'm a community. All effects come from beliefs.
Right.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, when we talk about religiosity, we're not just saying, I have some set of beliefs. I believe, am I intrinsically religious because I believe that it's good to help other people, that we have to share space, that we should broaden our social policies to take care of the people who can't take care of them? Does that make me intrinsically religious just because I believe those things sincerely?
What makes you intrinsically religious, according to the studies, is that you believe in God, you believe in sort of like a God is your foundation for doing good. You believe the beliefs of the religion, for example, with Christianity, the virgin birth, resurrection, etc. You go to church, you become a religious person because you want to get closer to God. That's the best way I can put it. Extrinsic religious people are religious because they want to be a part of community. They want to be more in the world. They want to just, go to church weeks and meet people and talk to people, go to study with other people, read things with other people. That's what it's about. So, and what you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And so what you seem to be doing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be saying, look, we have Jains, we have Muslims, we have Christians. And, it's not the beliefs. It's the fact that they're part of a community. It's the fact that they're doing things together, which is causing this behavior. And again, it distinguishes that.
No. So here's the thing. You define two categories, neither of which fits me. Okay? So there's intrinsic religiosity, and you're saying that is people who sincerely believe in God, and in the case of Christianity, I guess, virgin birth and resurrection. Cool. Extrinsic religious people are people who participate in their local church. The same. Let's say you and I go to the same exact Christian church, and you're an intrinsic Christian. You believe in God. You believe in virgin birth, resurrection, etc. And I'm an extrinsic religious individual. I don't actually believe in those things, but I believe in the church and in the community and those sorts of things. That's two different categories, neither of which is the category I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone who sincerely believes in doing good for its own sake, whether or not they're a part of a religious thing. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the virgin birth. I don't believe in a resurrection. But I believe in doing good for other people, in building a better society, and broadening all these. All of these are sincere beliefs I have. I'm saying that the religious aspect, the things that you wanted to say were intrinsic religious, believing in a virgin birth, resurrection, and God, have nothing at all to do with whether or not one believes in doing good, being charitable, not killing people.